What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Thursday, October 17th, 2024. Big thanks for tuning in wherever, however you're tuning in. If it's on the radio dials at 105.1 FM, 790 AM, online, Sports Talk 105 there, streaming it on the app. Download that, take it on the go. You got your smart devices and video streams that are currently up and rolling on Facebook and YouTube this morning. What up, everybody? How y'all doing here this morning? What do we got on a good old game plan for us? Well, tell you what, because I'm gonna be out tomorrow. I'm gonna be out tomorrow, so we are gonna do a little kind of like a football Friday sort of feel here. We're gonna talk some Packers getting set to take on the Texans. We'll talk a little Badgers as well. And since I'll be out tomorrow, Dr. Crow is going to join us for Inside the Training Room at 7:20 this morning. So just a little bit later than a normal Friday time, just because they got football practice this morning. So Dr. Crow will be joining us after football practice for our Thursday edition of Inside the Trading Room. So, kind of a football Friday feel, since we'll be out tomorrow and such. So, with that, I want to hear your predictions. I want to hear your keys to victory. I want to hear your key matchups, all that good stuff. All right, on a uh, typical Friday football. Let's move it up a day and hit me up with what you're thinking. What's your key matchups? What are you most intrigued about with this Packers and Texans game? Or you want to throw in Badgers Northwestern? Hey, that works too. All right, that works too. So we're gonna hit that up throughout the morning here. Packers did return to practice yesterday. Their new kicker getting some work in as well. And for the most parts, it seems like Packers not a bad injury report from practice yesterday. Dontavian Wicks, who left the game early last week due to a shoulder injury, and there was reports out there saying week to week, but he practiced it in a limited fashion. That's good. The only ones who didn't was Elton Jenkins, which Wednesday just could be Veterans Day for him. Colby Wooden didn't practice, and Devonte Wyatt still not practicing. So, other than that, it looks pretty darn, knock on wood, solid with this injury report right now. So, we'll maybe get a better idea today and tomorrow. Just hold our breath that nothing happens or anybody gets dinged up at practice. and such. So, but plenty of green and gold chats coming at you as we get set for week 7 already. We're already approaching just a couple weeks from now, the halfway mark of this NFL regular season. I know we say it every single week or every couple weeks and every single year, but boy, does it fly on by at this point. And I mean, the week officially kicks off tonight with Thursday Night Football. So if you haven't got your picks in, which I have not yet, for our Pro Football Weekly Pick'em Challenge, you better go do that at our website, Sports Talk 1051 dot com. What do we got? Denver and the Saints tonight. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so the return of Sean Payton. I get it now. I gotcha. So that's his first one back in New Orleans, right? It's got to be his first one back in New Orleans over there. So we'll get to that. We will do some receiver defer riding solo here this morning. So if you have any good receiver defers, I'm open, man. All right, so hit me up, shoot me those texts on over, and give me some receiver defers. Okay, I'll take some. You got a good one over there, so we'll hit that up. Got a little throwback Thursday. We'll do that just before we chat with Dr. Crow here this morning as well. Baseball playoffs continuing. Dodgers picking up. win last night to go up 2-1. Liberty, thanks to Sabrina's deep three in the WNBA Finals, game 3 last night, the Liberty take a 2-1 lead over the, Minnesota Lynx. We've got, going back to baseball here really quick, both games in action today. Yankees, Cleveland, 4:08, and Dodgers, Mets, nightcap at 7:08, this morning. So, we'll throw some we'll throw some baseball talk in here as well. So, ah, remember the other day we were talking about Oregon's 12-man loophole sort of thing? Good coaching or not, and it kind of felt like it was maybe gonna be adjusted. The NCAA already closed that loophole. They already issued a new rules interpretation on it. So, ah, hey, I guess tip of the cap to Dan Lansing and Oregon over there for exposing that. So, but what else we no outdoor tidbits today. Jake's out duck hunting. So best of luck to our good buddy, Mr. Jake Boakes. He's gonna sneak out and do some duck hunting this morning. He was gonna call from the blind, and it's like, dude, no, just focus on the ducks and best of luck out there for you here this morning. So we'll catch up with Jake hopefully next week as we start to inch a little bit closer and closer to the November deer gun season. So we're working on maybe a little get together with a few peeps over there. Maybe have sit around a fire or have a little bourbon or something like that, and just talk a little hunting with Jake and such before we get to the November deer season. So stay tuned for that for more details potentially coming up here in the near future. So, but a lot of gonna get to this coming up in a little bit. But I wanna throw this out there right now. So, I don't wanna sound like we're, Jets 2.0 or, a Jets talk station here too, but I wanna go back to something that Rogers said on his appearance on the Pat McAfee show, and what caught my attention it was later yesterday, what caught my attention to it was 'cause I'll be honest, if it's on and I'm not doing anything, yeah, I'll have it on the background, but I it's not must listen stuff to me anymore, not like when he was with Green Bay because you're at that point like, "Oh gosh, what is he gonna say?" Kinda holding your breath or whatever. But what caught my attention, the other day was Ryan Fitzpatrick. So, longtime journeyman quarterback in the NFL. He had, quote tweeted it, this clip, and I'll play the clip. He quote tweeted something, and what Ryan Fitzpatrick said was, "This response is the biggest thing I don't understand about Aaron. He can be super charismatic, his swagger gives teammates the ultimate confidence, but why can't he shoulder all the blame in the media and then get behind closed doors?" In this case, referring to Mike Williams, the receiver over there, who missed practice yesterday due to personal reasons. It sounds like he might be on a trading block now. But Fitzpatrick goes on to continue close doors with Mike Williams or the whole offense or the whole team or anyone else that isn't doing their job and tell him he needs more out of them. The need to set the record straight at the expense of someone lesser than him just hurts me. And when I saw that, I went back to 11 years ago, and I'm like, that's similar, if not the same, from what Greg Jennings and Donald Driver were saying. Remember when it all kinda started in 2013, this whole rift where Jennings came out and said some stuff, and it's like, "No, dude, you're in Minnesota and, just but then when Donald Driver kind of agreed with Jennings and Driver explained it a little bit more, it sounds verbatim to what Fitzpatrick said. So I guess where I'm getting at with this, turning it to a little or turning it to the Packer sense, 2013, during that time, whenever there was something negative that came out about Rodgers, let's face it, a lot of Packers fans, not all, but a lot of Packers fans came to the defense of Rodgers and just really ridiculed Greg Jennings really ridiculed anybody who kind of came out against, Rodgers at that point in time. But now that time has passed, maybe seeing some more examples of this and such, more opinions of it. Has your viewpoint or has your opinion changed from maybe what it was 10, 11 years ago about, with the former teammates kinda coming out and saying some stuff? It caught my attention because Fitzpatrick's, again, a guy who's was in the league for a long time. Yes, journeyman quarterback, I understand it. But it caught my attention because what Fitzpatrick was saying there was pretty much exactly what Donald Driver was saying. Donald Driver is a beloved Packer, and that one kind of, his comments kinda get swept under the rug because he's a beloved Packer. But Jennings, not a lot of people cared for it, didn't like it, threw him under the bus, threw him to the side. So as time has gone by, and I'll play the clip a little bit later on when we get to that segment and such. Has your viewpoint on that whole situation changed in terms of how you maybe view Aaron now and a lot of it is leadership, being a leader on a team in that. That's what it kinda boils down to. So, get to that a little bit later, because we're gonna lead off things here this morning. Again, we're gonna be out tomorrow, so I wanna do a football Friday with all of you. I'm gonna miss it tomorrow. I'm gonna miss kinda talking about the game and the matchup with you and previewing it and that sort of stuff. So I wanna do that with you all today. So hit me up with some text, okay? Or comment on the video streams or hit me up on the socials and such. What are your keys to victory? What are your key matchups? What are your predictions for the game? I have to miss it tomorrow, so I want to make sure that I get to chat with you guys and gals some football here this morning and talking about which I think is going to be a fun game. I'll be at the game with my kid. I hope it's a W. It's going to be a tough game. Houston's playing really well, one of the better teams in the National Football League. Got 2 young quarterbacks, 2 young teams really too, with high expectations. The ceiling, as Michael Jordan once said, "The ceiling is the roof." But this is gonna be a fun game, and it's gonna be, I think, a really close game and a tough game here too. So let's break it all down, all right? We'll take our first break, and then coming up on the leadoff here this morning, we'll talk some green and gold football, a Thursday edition of a little football Friday. All right, quick break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. I want to talk to you though. Hit me up with some texts, tweets, Facebook posts. Are you in the market for maybe getting a new home or maybe getting your first home, or maybe you are just looking for a piece of land to call your own, maybe some hunting land over there? Not sure where to start? We'll start with Woods and Water Realty. Just head to their website, woodsandwater.com. Check out the listings over there, and their entire team will help you find your new home, your new dream home, or maybe that hunting land that you have been dreaming about for a long, long time. Again, the website woodsandwater.com, Woods and Water Realty, your real estate store. Let's get things going. Again, going to be out tomorrow, so I want to do a football Friday with you on Thursday because I want to make sure we chat a little bit about this game before we're off here too. So let's do it. Let's break it down. Packers, Texans, Sunday, Lambeau Field, noon kickoff. Kind of surprised it's noon kickoff, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not complaining right now. So, how do these teams match up? Well, we know, they're two of the younger teams out there, led by two young quarterbacks. CJ Stroud, I think, really surprised a lot of people, even being second overall pick, surprised a lot of people with his play last year as a rookie, and so far this year is still playing at a high level. Texans, in the offseason, one of those teams too, making moves. Daniel Hunter, Stephon Diggs to kind of, push for it, go for it, while you got CJ Stroud under a rookie contract. And right now, you look at the Texans. I mean, one loss. They're 5-1. Their lone loss coming from the Minnesota Vikings. How do they stack up offensively, defensively, compared to the rest of the league? I think it's fair to say that the Texans are one of the more well-rounded, complete teams in the National Football League in terms of offense and in defense. Offensively, they're just outside the top 5 in yards per game. They're sixth in the entire league in yards per game. Green Bay is a top 5 team. They're 4th in the National Football League in yards per game. The leader is still Baltimore, 453.7 yards per game. Green Bay's got 400.8. Houston coming in at 375.2. But then defensively, you look at yards allowed per game, and Houston is a top 3 defense in that department. Houston is only giving up 277 yards per game, which is, when you look at, you're like, well, who's the number one team? Tennessee, 248.8. Then you got the Jets at second place there with 273. So, I mean, you're talking about a top 10 offense, top 5 defense right now for the Houston Texans in terms of yards allowed per game. Let's go back to the Texans offense here and kind of highlight some of this. Now, it obviously is a big loss for the Texans to not have Nico Collins. Nico Collins was off to an absolutely fantastic and hot start to this season. But they got other weapons on this ball club here too, and they got Joe Mixon back, and Joe Mixon coming off of a very good game going up against the Patriots. You still got Stephon Diggs, who is very familiar with going up against Green Bay and Jair, during his time with Minnesota and such. So, I mean, they, even though Nico is banged up and such, they got other weapons in this for this Texans team. So they obviously have to account for that. They got guys who could step up into that role and try to fill in for Nico Collins. Nico Collins is a premier player, no doubt about it, but they got other options they can go to. And within this style of offense, which is similar to Green Bay's, you got Bobby Slowick Jr. That name sounds familiar. Yes, former Packers defensive coordinator back in the day. His dad was. But Bobby Slowick Jr. again come under the tutelage of Kyle Shanahan and was actually on the same staff with Matt LaFleur when they were in Washington, but he was a defensive assistant, defensive quality control, I believe, off the top of my head. But then goes to San Francisco and becomes an offensive-minded coach, and now an offensive coordinator with the Texans. So obviously, similar concepts to what Green Bay runs and what Matt LaFleur wants to do over there too. So you got that, but I think when you look at this and when you kind of break it down here a little bit individually in terms of the Texans offense, they are a top just outside. No, they are top 5. They are a top 5 team in terms of passing yards per game, 256.3. The only teams higher than them, Seattle, San Francisco, Dallas, and Detroit. Green Bay, for comparison, 6, 7, 8, 9. Green Bay's 10th in passing yards per game. Now, when you get to rushing yards per game, Green Bay is second overall at this point. Houston's about middle of the pack, but right now Houston is still putting up 118 yards per game on the ground. Points, you're looking at Green Bay being 2, 4, 6. Okay, so they're a top 10 team in terms of points per game. They're scoring 27 points per game. Houston, about middle of the pack there. They're about 23.8 points per game. So that's where they're at offensively with this thing. And I think, it's still going to start with stopping the run. Don't let Joe Mixon go off and have himself a day. He's coming off that nice performance against the New England Patriots. So he was banged up a little bit before that, missed the Minnesota game. Not saying he would have been the biggest factor, would have completely changed that game against Minnesota. The way Minnesota was playing that game, I don't think that would have been the case by any means. But when you look at what Mixon has done so far this year, he's played 3 games, 286 yards. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. So he's averaging 5.5 yards per carry at this point. That's pretty darn solid for the former Cincinnati Bengal. So I think you still have to look at this and prepare for Mixon, because in his 3 games, he opened up the season against the Colts and he ran the ball 30 times for 159 yards. The Bears were able to slow him down slightly. He only had 9 carries for 25 yards. I mean, not a lot of production, not a lot of opportunities over there. Then he gets hurt, misses some time, and then bounces back last week with that nice performance. The other thing, too, with Mixon that you got to be aware of, Mixon in the passing game, too. I mean, he's a running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield, can make some plays in that passing game. So that's something Green Bay's got to be aware of. He's averaging 9.3 yards per catch so far this season. So something to keep an eye on, especially with Nico Collins missing this game for the Texans and such. Stefon Diggs, you look at the numbers, what he has done so far this year, it's probably not going to blow you away a whole lot because Nico was on such a fantastic start to the season. But I mean, I got to imagine Stefon Diggs thinking, knowing that he's going to be going up against Jair and him. They've had their battles and their trash talks back and forth and that. I got to imagine Stefon Diggs is going to be like, all right, here we go. This is my time. I got to step it up. I got to be the guy in this game. Let's go. He's got 392 yards on 37 catches so far. Does have 3 touchdowns this season too. Tank Dell, pay attention to that guy. But also, talking about running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield and such and be effective in the passing game, former Badger running back Dario Ogunbowale is somebody to pay attention to as well. In 6 games as a running back, he's got 15 catches on 16 targets for 155 yards. That's a 10.3 average. So Packers have to be aware of that former Badger over there too. Dalton Schultz, the tight end, he's a guy Probably remember him more during his time with the Cowboys a couple years ago, a few years ago and such. But he's a guy that could go off in a game there too. And then your quarterback, CJ Stroud. 6th in the league in passing yards. He's got 10 touchdown passes so far this year, 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions on the season. So far this year, CJ Stroud, if you're looking at, big topic every week heading up and going up against an offense has been, well, is this a week that maybe Green Bay can get after the quarterback and maybe Green Bay can rack up some sack numbers going up against this Houston Texans line? Well, so far this year, CJ Stroud has been sacked 16 times. Last year, he was sacked 38 times. But so far in 6 games, he has been sacked 16 times. Just to kind of put it in a little bit of a comparison here, Jordan Love in 4 games has been sacked 4 times. So there's going to be an opportunity for these pass rushers, I think, to get after CJ Stroud. And that to me is going to be a key to victory for the game for the Packers here. CJ Stroud is not the biggest rushing quarterback in the league. This year, he's got 17 carries, 75 yards. That's an average of 4.4, which is on pace to what he did last year. Last year, 39 carries, a $167, 4.3. So he's kind of like Jordan Love in that essence of not the biggest rusher, but he could pick up some yards with his legs if he needs to. He's not going to be a Lamar. He's not going to be a Kyler Murray. He's not going to be the Anthony Richardson. He's not going to be one of those type of running quarterbacks, not even like a Josh Allen. So I think a key to this game is going to have to be that Packers front, that pressure. Can they generate pressure and get after CJ Stroud so he's not comfortable behind the line of scrimmage, so he doesn't have time to find guys like Stephon Diggs? Get after him and take him down. Make him feel uncomfortable back there. Always have that consistent pressure on him. That to me is going to be a key in this game, is if that Packers defense can get after it. Will it be something similar to the Tennessee game where they had 8 sacks and just constantly pressured Will Levis? I think a lot of us would love 8 sacks in this game, but I think it's also fair to say Packers and Jeff Hafley may respect CJ Stroud a little bit more than Will Levis. I mean, CJ Stroud's a pretty darn good quarterback, but I think you have to provide some consistent pressure against CJ Stroud. You don't make him comfortable behind that pocket so he can't pick apart the defense and find guys like Stephon Diggs and some other receivers like Dalton Schultz or Tank Dell or even Joe Mixon or Ogumbo Wale. So that's one key for me. And plus, I mean, you also have to factor in slowing down Joe Mixon, not allowing him to get comfortable and not allowing him to go out there and run the ball all over the place. Now, the other factor, really quick, I forgot to bring this up, going back to CJ Stroud. According to Pro Football Focus, CJ Stroud is the top quarterback going up against the blitz this season. He is the top quarterback going up against the blitz this season. So that's why I think it's more important to provide that pressure with your 4, with your down 4, maybe even just your 5, without having to bring extra blitzers, without having to bring extra guys. If you can get home with your front, with your 4, 5 down linemen, that's where it's going to be important. Otherwise, CJ Stroud so far this year has picked apart blitzing defenses. So providing that pressure without bringing extra blitzers is going to be important for Green Bay in this game. Doing that, slowing down Joe Mixon, not allowing him to run free on that defense, and essentially really making the play action game a thing for the Texans. Because if they're going to have success running the ball with Joe Mixon, it turns that play action game into a threat for that Texans offense. Packers offensively going up against this Texans defense. What are going to be the keys? Well, obviously one thing is going to be keeping Jordan Love clean again. And for the most part, I mean, 4 games and 4 sacks. Yeah, he's been pressured here and there. But for the most part, they've kept him clean. And that's a credit to Jordan Love for getting the ball out quick. Right? And I mean, that's a credit over there too. When you look at this defense so far for the Texans, they've recorded 19 sacks so far this season. 19 sacks with DeMeco Ryans with DeMeco Ryans defense. When you're looking at some of those guys on that roster, I mean, you've got Will Anderson Jr., who is off to, I mean, you want to talk about another youngster who is off to a fantastic start. Will Anderson Jr. has already got 5.5 sacks so far this year. That's tied for the 5th most in the league. So definitely have to be aware of that. Have to be aware of Will Anderson Jr. When you look at sacks, Houston is 2 for 6th most in the entire league. 6th most in the entire league in terms of sacks. Chicago's right there at 18. Baltimore, actually, they're tied for 5th because Baltimore has 19 sacks as well. So Green Bay, outside the top 10, they're 16. So kind of put that into, I mean, maybe that surprises people when you say, Green Bay maybe just outside top 10 in terms of sacks there. But Will Anderson Jr., know where that guy is. Know where he's going to be lined up. Danielle Hunter. Packers are very familiar with their time against Danielle Hunter. The longtime Minnesota Viking. He's got 2.5 sacks so far this season. That's where the main guys are going to be coming from. The edges. Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, those guys. You have to pay attention to where they're at. And, Zach Tom, I feel like, Zach Tom's going to do a fairly good job over there. I mean, he's been pretty darn good outside of the Rams game, which was just kind of a fluke maybe for Zach Tom. He bounced back nicely against Arizona. But Zach Tom has been a pretty darn solid player so far this year. You feel good about him over there, maybe going up against Will Anderson Jr. I think the big one might be Danielle Hunter if he's going to be lined up on Walker, or if they move Will Anderson Jr. around and they line him up over Walker. Will the Packers have to have a chip going against one of those guys, or can that offensive line hold their own without having to sacrifice an extra pass catcher to be a blocker like a tight end or anything like that? But you look at Houston's defense overall, and they're solid across the board. We went through their total yards, ranking and such. But when you break it down in terms of passing and rushing defense, if you want to break it down a little bit more like that, Houston, in terms of passing yards allowed per game, Houston's a top 5 team. They're 4th in the league in terms of allowing passing yards through the air, 163.2. 163.2. The 3 teams ahead of them is Tennessee, the Jets, and the Miami Dolphins over there. Rushing yards allowed per game. This is where Houston's about middle of the pack. They're giving up 113.8 on the ground this year. Green Bay's actually better than them. Green Bay giving up 110. But I think it's fair to say, though, too, Green Bay is going to be throwing the football. When you look at this, I mean, we've done this against Arizona. We've done this against the Rams and all that, and it's like, oh, it looks like this is a game for Green Bay to really run the football, and they've tried it. It's not like Josh Jacobs the last couple weeks has gone off, and being named FedEx Ground Player of the Week, and that Green Bay's still going to throw the football. And to me, that's going to be a key in this one is Green Bay's passing offense. How much success are they going to have against the fourth best pass defense in the league in terms of yards given up? It's going to be Matt LaFleur versus, D'Amico Ryans and such. That to me is going to be a fascinating chess match in terms of a great offensive play caller, a great offensive minded head coach going up against a great defensive minded head coach. I'm a big fan of D'Amico Ryans, and he has shown that he is already a year and a half into his tenure as a full-time head coach. He has proven that he is a pretty darn good coach. And you look at his years of being a defensive coordinator with the 49ers, he's proven to be a pretty darn good defensive play caller too. So for me, this is going to be such an interesting matchup. Both play callers for each team. LaFleur and going up against D'Amico and the Texans defense. But then Jeff Hafley going up against, Bobby Sloak Jr., a guy, a young offensive-minded play caller who is towards the top of prospective head coaches in this league. Got interviews already last year. Anybody who wants to pick another apple from that Shanahan tree, they're going to look at Bobby Sloak Jr. Very similar styles, especially on the offensive side. Which one is going to have the advantage here? But I'm really looking forward to that Packers offense going up against this Texans defense. Knowing, Texans defense, they're familiar with a lot of that concepts. So what else is Matt LaFleur going to do to keep them on their heels, to keep them guessing, trying to confuse them, trying to stay that one step ahead? That to me is a key here too. I think it's setting up to at least on paper, it looks like a fantastic matchup all across the board when you factor everything in. Now, as a Packers fan, I hope it's a blowout victory for the Packers. I hope it's just pure domination with the Texans coming to town. I hope it's pure domination from Green Bay. And when you look at the Texans, I know this isn't really is it maybe the tell-all of tell-alls, but they've played in some really tight games except for a couple of them. Their blowout loss to the Vikings, it was 34-7. They beat the Patriots 41-21 last week. Colts, it went down to the wire, 29-27. Bears, they escaped with a victory against the Bears, 19-13. They escaped against the Jaguars, 24-20. They beat the Bills, 23-20. Now they're going up against a pretty darn good team with Green Bay. Playing, I think now, you look at what Jordan Love did last couple weeks, looking a little bit more comfortable, looking healthier, maybe getting that rust knocked off. You're seeing some young guys on the defensive side, maybe Jeff Hafley, settling into a rhythm as well, especially figuring out his rotations and such. It's going to be a tough matchup for both of these ball clubs. One player really quick too that I want to talk about is Keyshawn Nixon. And we talked a little bit about Keyshawn Nixon earlier. But Keyshawn is a guy that is I don't know if there's like a middle ground with him in terms of from Packers fans. I feel like Packers fans really like him or they're very indifferent. I don't think nobody like dislikes him or anything like that. I hope not. But I think you look at if you are a believer in advanced statistics and numbers, analytics, he's having a pretty darn solid season. And Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders DVOA, okay, you probably heard of that. He's been on this with the last few days about how good of a season Keyshawn Nixon is having. And he broke down the numbers. Coverage DVOA, comparing these three. Coverage DVOA with three Packers corners with at least 100 coverage snaps. So you don't want a higher number. Higher the number means giving up more passes. Okay. Eric Stokes is a plus 40%. Keyshawn Nixon is a minus 31%. Jaire is a minus 37%. By that metric, Keyshawn Nixon is having a much better season in coverage than what Eric Stokes is. So to me, that's going to be interesting to maybe watch 25 a little bit more. And we saw it last week against Arizona, where Keyshawn started to get snaps on the outside along with Jaire, and then Javon Bullard, safety playing a little bit of that slot nickel role. Evan Williams playing more snaps at safety. Eric Stokes, snaps cut. Carrington Valentine, snaps cut. Are we going to see that trend continue here too? But Keyshawn Nixon might be a guy to kind of just out. We know him about his returnability, and we know him about his special teams and that. But maybe we got to start watching 25 on the defensive side a little bit more too. All right, I gotta take a quick break here. All right, let's do that. Keep your text coming. Hit me up with the text 715-830-1912 or hit me up on the video streams or socials too. We'll be back in just a few minutes to wrap up the first hour. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Shout out Toyson Ford and Hy-Vee, also partners of the Mobile Man Cave, along with the Elbow Room, Carpet City Flooring Center, and Woods and Water Realty. Mobile Man Cave is going to be out and about next week. Going to be participating in the Eau Claire Nationals trunk or treat event next Thursday. So that should be a lot of fun. But make sure you're following, subscribing, turn on that little toggle over there so episodes download automatically, because we're going to have a couple episodes that drop later today. And one of them is going to be part of the Rollin' with the Golds podcast that we do with UW Eau Claire Blue Golds, just because yesterday we did it, and it is such a fantastic conversation with three members of the football team, all three wide receivers. And I'll just say this without giving it away. Hearing their stories, which all three of them were different, and how they got to where they're at, how they got to be playing college football, and hearing their life stories a little bit, it reminded me, it was a good reminder for myself why we love sports, for the love of the game. And it's such a fun conversation, fantastic conversation. I want you all to listen to it with these three young men who are just good. They're awesome role models for any youngster out there with dreams of maybe playing college football or playing, high school sports and such. Just listening to their stories and how, their path, if you will. So it's awesome. It's fantastic. I highly recommend listening to it. Later on, it'll be up on Rolling with the Golds podcast. It'll drop later on this morning, and I'm going to have portions of it on the Man Cave podcast too, just because it's so much fun. And then we have a little fun too, which since they're all three wide receivers, right? Who's the goat? Who's a corner that they would love to go up against? One really fun answer in that too. It was those three they're fantastic peeps. So again, check it out a little bit later on here this morning. I don't think the texting line is working right now. I think because I'm getting an error every time I try to refresh it. So we'll see. Maybe now it's going to be working. I know that error is not coming up. So hit me up with a text 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, or you can comment on the video streams and social media as well. We're going to have a little early version again because we're out tomorrow. Okay. We're out tomorrow. I don't want to get emails saying what's going on. We're out tomorrow. So Dr. Crow is going to be joining us coming up in about 20 minutes, 20 or so minutes, a little bit later than a normal Friday. So he's going to be with us at 7:20 here. We'll catch up with him. And then we got a little throwback Thursday. We're going to do receiver defer coming up at about 7:45. And I think I'm going to make that Rogers segment I was kind of previewing at the top of the hour part of a little receiver defer. So we'll get to that coming up here. We've got playoff baseball continuing, both games in action today. The Dodgers picked up a win last night, so they're up 2-1 in their series. Yankees, Guardians. Yankees looking to go 3-0. Guardians trying to get it's a pivotal game 3 for them. The Liberty last night, thanks to Sabrina hitting a deep 3 from the logo with 1 second left. Liberty taking a 2-1 advantage in the WNBA Finals over the Minnesota Lynx. So NBA season for the Bucks officially tips off less than a week now, and well, shot clock's there. So I'm going to throw a little Giannis talk coming up here too, because he did an interview with The Athletic, and there's a quote from him that's kind of running amok right now, making headlines, because everybody thinks Giannis will be playing somewhere at some point. And a comment he said probably didn't help settle those fires. We'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. Second hour kicking off on this Thursday morning of October 17th. A big thanks for tuning in, however, wherever you may be tuning in from. Coming up in about, let's say, 12 minutes or so. Thursday edition of Inside the Training Room with Dr. Crow inside the training room, Triple Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, because we're going to be off tomorrow. So Dr. He I want to talk about Aiden Hutchinson, with him, and that suffered Dallas Cowboys. So, we're gonna talk about that and a couple other things, as well. So, he's coming up here in just a little bit. We're kinda still doing I shouldn't say kinda still doing, it is, since we're gonna be off tomorrow, kind of a football Friday. So your keys to victory, your key matchups, predictions, all that good stuff. Hit me up with a text or comment on the video streams, or hit me up on the socials here too. Taking your receiver defer questions. Going to be doing that. Riding solo in about what are we at here? About 30 minutes or so. So get to that coming up here in just a little bit. Quick throwback Thursday for you. This day, 1943, the Detroit Lions set a rushing record when they achieved a negative 53 yards against the Chicago Cardinals. Negative 53 rushing yards against the Cardinals back in 1943. I think whenever I hear Lions and rushing yards, I still always go back to when the Packers held to Barry Sanders. Remember that one? It was like one, -1 or whatever it was. I remember watching that as a kid too. So we got one more throwback Thursday too. We've got to wish a very happy birthday to our good buddy Jason from Carpet City Flooring Center. It's his birthday. If you're going on over to visit our good friends at Carpet City Flooring Center and you're looking to get some new floors, whether it's carpet tile, shower tile, luxury vinyl flake, like Rigid Max flooring, make sure you wish our good buddy Jason a happy birthday over there. So Jason, don't know if you're listening, but happy birthday to our good friends, Jason from Carpet City Flooring Center. Hopefully, you get spoiled by all of your team members over there today. Make sure they spoil you today there, big guy. So, all right. Let's talk some hoops here before we get to Dr. Crow. So, as we get set for the start to the Milwaukee Bucks season coming up on Wednesday, where you can listen to the games. Reminder, you can listen to the games here at 105.1 FM and at 790 AM on Sports Talk 105.1. Giannis did an interview with the Athletic, with Sam Amick from the Athletic, and there's a quote that's running around that he said that is feel like this is becoming a tradition in the last few years when it comes to Giannis. Is that where's he going to play next? Is he going to get traded? Is it going to be Golden State? Is it going to be the Lakers? It's going to be New York. I mean, the new it seems like it's been Golden State attached to him the last couple of years and such. But when he was talking to the Athletics, Sam Amick, he apparently grabbed a Bucks staffer and asked him this question, quote, "If we don't win this year, would you get fired? Do you have it in the back of your mind like, what if this year doesn't go well? Yeah, if we don't win a championship, I might get traded. This is the job we live. This is the world we're living in. It's everybody." So that quote has been all over the place now. It's been thrown out there. It's a headline to blogs, to articles, to radio shows, to tweets, to Facebook posts. Giannis saying he's going to get traded, or he could get traded if they don't win the championship. Um, I think it's key to put it in some context too. Now, sounds like he was joking, as NBC Sports BayArea.com said. Giannis jokingly asked, but because it's Giannis and because he plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, you've got certain organizations, uh, blogs, whatever you want to call them, running with just that quote that Giannis is saying he could get traded if the Bucks don't win it all this year. I mean, I guess it could happen. I don't want to say there's a 0% chance of that happening, but I right now would probably put it at a 1% chance of happening. I'd probably put it at a 1% chance of happening. So I think too many people are overreacting to it. I think too many people are taking it too literally, what he said. And is he really that? I mean, I think he was addressing it like you look at the world of sports and you look at a lot of different teams and you look at a lot of different leagues where those players, those top players, if their teams don't win it, how many times have we seen where a team has to quote unquote go under a rebuild, where they move on from their high priced, high talented players? It ain't working. They break up the team and they kind of start over. That to me is what Giannis was referring to. I don't think that's going to happen with the Bucks. I don't want to say it's never say never, but at this point, I don't see that happening with the Bucks if they don't win it all this year. I don't see that happening. But I get what Giannis was saying. I understand that. And from everything that we have heard and everything that we have seen and read about Giannis, this is a guy that is focused on one thing and one thing only: winning, winning, winning championships. And that's the goal at hand. And that's the number one thing for him and for this team. They know what's at stake. You don't make a trade for Damian Lillard last year if it's not championship or bust. You don't fight, or you don't not fight. You don't fire a first year head coach, not even halfway or about halfway through the season, if it's not championship or bust. He understands it. This team understands it, what the goals, what the expectations are, regardless of what the national media has to say about this team, regardless of what the national media expects from this team. So if you're seeing a headline saying Giannis saying he could get traded, put it into context. Put it in a little bit more context. Read the whole thing. Understand the whole thing. Understand the whole situation at this point. I ain't panicking about what Giannis said, and I hope a lot of Bucks fans aren't either. All right, let's take a quick break. Then let's do some inside the training room with Dr. Crow. All right, I know that they had practice this morning, so we'll catch up with him for a few minutes. Want to talk a little bit about the Aiden Hutchinson injury. If you didn't see the video, don't see the video. It's pretty gruesome, but we'll talk about it and more with Dr. Crow coming up next.
There's something for everyone, so be sure to see for yourself. Be ready with your credit or debit card and get ready to save. For more details and to find out about all the savings, just go to aroundthe715.com.
You want to feel important. You want to be a part of something bigger, something that matters and can help change things. You want to feel like you belong. We know. We felt that way too. And that's why we did something about it. We aren't just Army National Guard soldiers. We are normal people just like you. And together, we can make a difference. Take on your legacy. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Sponsored by the Wisconsin Army National Guard, aired by the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association and this station.
It's just easy, you know? No mysteries, no secrets. Tell us what you love about him. No assumptions. I found a guy that's easy to be with.
It's natural to be a little nervous giving jewelry.
But you should never feel that way shopping for it. If we're together, it's great. If he's traveling for work, that's also fine. It's easy to be with him. I just keep coming back to that word.
At Lasker Jewelers, we train our team on asking, listening, and uncovering just the right ring.
Or other precious thing. We don't get caught up in that stuff. If he tells me I look pretty, I'm not second guessing it. We don't have those, but what did you really mean conversations.
Lasker's is the easiest place
To buy the right one for the right one.
across from Oakwood Mall, Eau Claire.
And online at laskers.com. So, yeah, easy. That's my favorite thing.
Kamala Harris gets that everyday costs are too high. She has real plans to tackle price gouging, cut taxes for middle-class families, and make life more affordable. Her opponent's plan?
Donald Trump plans to impose what is, in effect, a national sales tax on everyday products. It will mean higher prices on just about every one of your daily needs. A Trump tax on gas, a Trump tax on food, a Trump tax on clothing, a Trump tax on over-the-counter medication. Donald Trump's plan would cost a typical family $3,900 a year. When everyday prices are too high, he will make them even higher.
Kamala Harris, a better plan for lowering costs for a future we can afford. Paid for by FFPAC, ffpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. FFPAC's responsible for the content of this advertising.
Sip your coffee, nibble a bagel, and listen to the morning sports show that lets sports fans speak their mind, no matter how little mind they have. The Dan Casper Show, weekday mornings from 6 to 9.
We're going to jump right into it because I know he is a busy individual, busy man, and thank you to Dr. Crow for adjusting his schedule here so we can catch up with him today because we'll be out tomorrow. But Dr. Crow just getting off the practice field this morning too. How's the team looking for your game going up against, is it the Illinois team coming up tomorrow night?
It is, yeah. United Township, I believe is what they're called, out of Moline. So big school, quite a bit bigger than us. So they have quite a bit of size in both numbers and literally size of the guys. But I think if we play our game, I think we can do okay. So should be a good contest for us going into the playoffs. So we're looking forward to it.
Anxious to see the seedings coming out on Saturday too, to see where you guys are matched up at?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, we're hoping for a good seed, obviously. But at the end of the day, we got to prove it on the field tonight, I think, or tomorrow night, I should say. So I think that'll be critical for us if we can pull that off. We're hoping to get a pretty high seed, but we'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely. So definitely exciting times there with high school football and getting close to playoffs already next week, man. Can't believe it. So
came up quick.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I gotta, I think the first thing I'm going to ask, because I texted you shortly after it happened, Aiden Hutchinson with that injury. I've been telling people if you haven't seen the video and you got a queasy stomach, maybe don't look at it because
that's a tough one.
Yeah. And first of all, the force, I mean, it wasn't like he got hit there. His leg hit his teammate. I mean, that's got to be a lot of force to hit his teammate's leg like that on a whip for it to bend a way it's not supposed to bend.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, for those who haven't seen the video, I mean, it's a pretty graphic fracture. So you see the displacement. So bones are incredibly strong at what's called axial loading. So what they're meant to do. So when you walk and run and you load a bone straight in line, bones are very strong. What they're not strong at is two things. One is rotation. So that's twisting. And so when you get a twisting moment to a bone, they break relatively easily. And the other is just straight, lateral bending forces. So in this case, as he was making that sack, he was literally whipping around and his leg whipped directly into his teammate's shin. And so it was kind of shin against shin, and that kind of lateral bending moment, the bone just isn't as strong as it is with the loading, and pop, there it went. And then, yes, it had a lot of force. Not only did it break, it kept going. So that's why you saw that leg kind of do that flop move. And we know because the leg flopped like that, it was a fracture of both bones, the tibia and the fibula. And again, that looks like a very horrible injury, and I'm sure it's not fun, right? But interestingly, that's gonna be an injury that he should bounce back from very well, and I expect him to have recovery process, of course, but I expect him to get back to 100% or close to it, despite it being a pretty nasty looking injury.
So the report was afterwards that he had like emergency surgery right after that. And when you hear emergency surgery, you're thinking the worst. So for an injury like that, why would it be emergency surgery to fix it?
Generally with a long bone fracture, we get to them as soon as we can. So, emergencies, I wouldn't say it's like an overblown thing, but it's probably a bit of an exaggeration. Urgent though, but I think I was talking to some people and I said, I bet you by the end of the day, he'll have a nail in that tibia. And that's generally how we treat tibia fractures in the shaft like that, is a what's called an intramedullary nail or rod. So we make a little incision above the tibia, and we actually kind of core the inside out. So it's called reaming. And then we slide a titanium rod inside the bone, lines it back up and links it back. And depending on the fracture pattern, sometimes we're allowing these guys to put weight on it very quickly. So he may even be walking on that leg right away, which is kind of baffling.
Yeah.
But it was, I remember as a medical student, one of the first surgeries I did as on my orthopedic rotation was putting a rod in the femur in this case, but same idea. And I remember the surgeon being like, we're going to let this guy walk on this tomorrow. And I was like, that is the coolest thing in the world. And that's one of the first things that kind of drew me to orthopedics, is just the ability to fix a bone like this and get someone back walking right away. It's amazing.
Now, I saw some people, and this is social media, so it's kind of a sketchy thing, but some people were saying, is this comparable to Alex Smith's leg injury? And it doesn't seem like that's comparable to Alex Smith's leg injury.
There's differences for sure. The biggest difference right off the bat is the fact it was a closed injury, meaning the bone didn't come through the skin. So when the bone comes out of the skin, it gets exposed to outside air and bacteria, and that's bad. And so right away, Alex Smith had a much more severe injury. The second thing is that the injury with Alex Smith had a lot more soft tissue damage with it. And so he had a lot more severe swelling, and so they had to kind of open up the leg with what are called fasciotomies. So there were differences right off the bat. Now, was it the same bone involved? It was. We certainly hope for a different outcome, of course, because you don't want to see anyone go through what Alex Smith went through. But yeah, I think the similarities end with it was a tibia fracture, and I think that's about it.
Nick Chubb, you talk about gruesome injuries. He's going to be playing this weekend. It sounds like, after that gruesome knee injury last year that we saw. How surprising, I think we've touched on this before, but the fact that he's going to be on the field right now, how amazing is that for him to go out there? And he's got to have some limitations, right? Maybe just kind of working his way back or such, but the fact that he's on that field, it's got to be pretty amazing from where he was at last year.
Absolutely 100% amazing. I take care of these type of injuries like a lot of other sports surgeons out there. And multi-ligament knee injuries, knee dislocations, these are horrific injuries. And to be totally honest, when we're treating these people, we're trying to say, all right, let's get this person a stable leg. Let's get them so they can walk the rest of their life and have a reasonable function. That's truly our goal. Now, will we take a person getting back to sports and stuff? Of course we will, but it's difficult to always achieve that. And so to be able to do it and get back to the NFL, it is just stunning. Now, we've talked about this in the past. NFL athletes are just built a little different. That's why they're NFL athletes, right? So,
yeah.
For him to be able to get back, he's just built different than a lot of people. But absolutely, it's a testament to what he's rehabbed, the surgeon who took care of him. I mean, everything across the board, impressive for sure.
To the courts, we saw Lonzo Ball last night going up against the Twins. 15 minutes coming off the bench, he scored 10 points. The reason I'm bringing him up is because, well, but for everybody else, this is a guy who's been going through a lot of leg injuries, knee injuries, and such. And he had a meniscus transplant, he said, back in March. Is that from a cadaver, or do they is that one of those where they grow? What's that process like?
Yep. So that is from a cadaver. So a meniscal transplant is a surgery where we take cadaver meniscus. It has to be matched. You can't just take a random one. It has to be matched. So it's size matched to match the size of the person receiving them. And so it's a relatively uncommon surgery. But I do them, for example, but no one's doing, dozens of them a week. I mean, it's going to be a handful a year. But it's a surgery that the patient has a deficient meniscus. So he had a meniscus tear, a meniscal injury. Almost inevitably with that type of injury, you're going to have some level of cartilage wear damage along with it. So it's not uncommon to do it in conjunction with a cartilage procedure. But long story short, we take that meniscus and we basically put it in. So you need to fix it to the tibia and then run stitches all the way around, tack it to the capsule around the edges. So it's a challenging surgery, technically speaking, for the surgeon. But we have good success with it, and it's a surgery that we're able to kind of get people back. It's not always a quote unquote permanent fix because that meniscus, it'll grow in, but there's still a relatively high reoperation rate. But considering the alternatives, it can be a really good option for some people that are trying to get back to higher level activities when they have a deficient meniscus.
Is there any risks or chance where the body would reject a meniscus like that?
No, we don't really have that issue in the knee. It's relatively what we call immunoprivileged, so you don't have blood flowing in the knee. So your synovial fluid doesn't reject things. So when we transplant cadaver tissue into the knees and joints, we don't really have a rejection issue. So as opposed to like a kidney or a liver transplant, we don't have that problem in the knee or any joint for that matter.
So would there be any? I mean, he played 15 minutes last night. This is a guy who's been going through a lot of stuff. Would this be something similar to like when Bakhtiari with all of his knee issues? If he had is it something similar to that where he could have had a transplant, something like that?
He was more of a cartilage, if you remember.
Okay.
So he was a cartilage where they did a cartilage. Now his was a Macy procedure, if you recall. That's where they harvest his own cartilage. They send it to a lab, they grow it, and then we re-implant that cartilage.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now so they're different procedures, but in the end, I mean, there are definitely some similarities as far as the recovery process and getting people kind of to build the leg back up. Because it's not the procedure getting the tissue to grow. Then you got to get the leg to basically restore its range of motion and strength, which is not always easy because generally these are knees that have had multiple surgeries on them. So it's often quite a deep hole that you dig, and then they got to build themselves back up. And again, they're not just trying to get back to, hey, I want to walk on the block. It's like, hey, I need to go play a professional sport. So they're pushing their bodies to the limit. So it makes it definitely more of a challenge to get them back. But at the end of the day, again, these people are able to do it just because of who they are.
Right. No kidding here too. So I know to wrap it up, because I know you got to get going here a little bit, but we saw last weekend too, and I know this is not necessarily orthopedic, but Coach Harbaugh had to get some issues done, or he had to go to the blue tent, and we don't usually see a coach leave a game. He did return though, but I mean, does that just kind of tell you the types of medical personnel that these teams have on these sidelines, that he was having a heart issue, and then he's able to get it checked out and gets cleared? I mean, I know you've talked about it before, how many MRIs and X-rays these players probably get and all that, but maybe that's another example of just the type of different medical personnel around sidelines.
Yeah. So, I mean, at an NFL level or Division I, I mean, they have a absolute host of medical providers. So ranging from athletic trainers, often they'll have even EMS or paramedics, and then physicians. Generally, they'll both have a sports medicine and then a medical doctor as well. Once you get to the NFL, often you'll add in either a neurologist or a neurosurgeon for the concussion side. So, yeah, I mean, you could have almost anything happen to you on the sideline. There's probably someone who could take care of you. Now, at the level of like high school, not quite as much. We'll generally have trainers and then sometimes a physician. So it obviously, as you step up the level of competition, you're gonna have more personnel on the side. But yeah, it really does. It's a testament that he was able to be taken care of so quickly in a fashion that luckily he was able to kind of get through it unscathed, or relatively speaking.
Yeah, and I know he just said too that his doctors told him he has the heart of an athlete. I don't know if that's true,
There you
but
go.
I think he's got the mindset of one for sure. So,
That I could say, yeah, for sure on that one.
well, Dr. Curl, we appreciate you adjusting your schedule here. Thank you for taking some time with us. Best of luck tomorrow, and we'll catch up with you next time and talk about the playoffs for your Ramblers and that.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great weekend.
You too. There you go. There's Dr. Crow inside the training room, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Big thanks for him for tuning in here. Tell you what, I want to take a quick break here because we're going to have a little bit of an extended receiver defer, but I want to play this clip that was from a couple days ago. It was from Rogers' appearance on the Pat McAfee show, and Ryan Fitzpatrick had an issue with it, and the reason I bring it up is because it's eerily similar to what Jennings and Driver said about Rodgers 11 years ago, and it was met with criticism from Packers fans. But now, 11 years later, has your mindset, has your attitude, has your has that changed regarding your opinion towards Aaron Rodgers? I'll explain a little bit more after I play the clip, and it'll make a little bit more sense. But let's take a quick break and just kind of reset and do a little extended receive or defer. And I'm going to include that, and it's going to be kind of a question back to you, Packers fans. All right, quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. If you're driving around this morning and you look in that upper left-hand corner of your windshield and you notice it's time to change that oil, well, make your appointment with ASAP Used Auto Parts in Eau Claire. Not only are they your go-to spot for high-quality used auto parts, but they're your go-to spot for oil changes and tires too, especially with winter coming up here. If it's time to change those tires, get some new ones to help do battle against some snow-covered roads, well, then head on over to ASAP Used Auto Parts in Eau Claire. ASAP Used Auto Parts in Eau Claire, Menominee Street, just across the street from the Dodge. So we're going to do a little receiver defer, but I'm going to lead it off with this one. It's something I noticed yesterday. Now, this was an appearance on Pat McAfee Show, Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays, where he was asked about something he had said in the presser, kind of calling out Mike Williams for doing something wrong. And McAfee asked him this. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick, journeyman quarterback, longtime NFL quarterback, Thursday Night Football now too, he had a response to this. And his response was eerily similar, if not almost the same, as the Jennings and Driver criticism of Rodgers 11 years ago, that a lot of Packers fans came into the defense of Rodgers and really kind of like that was the start of Jennings, you're dead to us, go away sort of thing. Driver really didn't get as much criticism because he's down Driver. But I'm going to play this, and I'm going to tell you what Fitzpatrick said. And Packers fans, then I'm going to revisit what Jennings and Driver said, and then a little receiver for Packers fans. Do you have a different opinion now 11 years later? The more we know, the bigger sample size. So audio courtesy from the Pat McAfee Show. So that's a little bit from the Pat McAfee Show on Tuesday there. And Ryan Fitzpatrick's response to this was, this response is the biggest thing I don't understand about Aaron. He can be super charismatic. His swagger gives teammates the ultimate confidence. But why can't he shoulder all the blame in the media and then get behind closed doors with Mike Williams or the whole offense or the whole team or anyone else that isn't doing their job and tell them he needs more out of them? The need to just set the record straight at the expense of someone lesser than just hurts me. And when I read that from Ryan Fitzpatrick, I instantly went back 11 years ago to where this whole Jennings and Rodgers drama started. And even Driver threw in some comments here. So this is kind of where it all started 11 years ago. And Jennings said this in 2013. I need to go back to my college days where the quarterback wasn't just viewed as oh so great and still prove that I can be successful. A lot of times when you have a guy who creates that spotlight for himself, and establishes that and takes a lot of that, it becomes so-and-so and the team. It should always be the team. Don't get me wrong, 12 is a great person. But when you hear all positives, all positives, all positives all the time, it's hard for you to sit down when one of your teammates says, man, come on, you've got to hold yourself accountable for this. It's hard for someone to see that now because all they've heard is I'm doing it right, I'm perfect. In actuality, we all have flaws. Now, Donald Driver had this to say after Jennings, who's trying to maybe clarify some of the stuff that Jennings was saying. And he said this in an ESPN radio interview back in 2013. This is from Donald Driver, beloved Packer. Quote, we've always said that the quarterback is the one that needs to take the pressure off of everyone else. If a guy runs the wrong route, it's easy for the quarterback to say, hey, I told him to run that route, than for the guy to be like, well, I ran the wrong route. Sometimes you ask Aaron to take the pressure off the guys so we won't look bad, but he didn't want to do that. He felt like if you did something bad, you do it. But I think that's the difference. You want that leadership, and I think sometimes you may not feel like you got it. You have to earn that respect at the end of the day, and I think that's what Greg was probably referring to. He's a nice guy. I think that's what you have to respect. I played with him 5 years, so I was able to experience everything he went through. I saw when he first got drafted, he came in with a chip on his shoulder in that draft, and it shouldn't have been Alex Smith taken number 1 overall. That's what the guy is. I've always told Aaron, don't forget where you come from, because the people are the ones who put you on that pedestal. You didn't put yourself there. I think that's what we are learning now. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I think he's a great guy. I'm friends with Aaron. And the Driver one is, in my opinion, eerily similar to what Fitzpatrick said. Where Driver said, we've always said the quarterback is the one that needs to take the pressure off everyone else. So I guess what it boils down to is Rodgers right for going in front of a media, going in front of, reporters and saying, hey, Mike should have did this, should have did that. So-and-so should have did this, should have did that. Instead of maybe taking the full blame or maybe just saying, you know what, I got to make a better throw and just leaving it at that, but then kind of taking it behind closed doors to talk about it. This is where, in my opinion, you have to understand the personalities. You have to understand how to lead individuals, different individuals. People will respond differently to different styles of leadership. Now, I don't want to point the finger at Rodgers. I don't want to point the finger at Mike Williams. I don't want to point the finger at Driver or Jennings or anything like that. But I think this is an example of knowing how you can motivate people and how you can lead people. And I go back, and I know I'm not saying this is an exact comparison, but I go back to a story that Bart Starr always told about Vince Lombardi and how there was, times at practice that Bart Starr was just getting chewed out by Lombardi, getting chewed out at practice. And Starr would always tell this story. It's one of my favorite stories. That he went in to Lombardi's office after practice and said, if you want to chew me out, I've got no problem with that. I can take it. But if you're going to chew me out, do it in your office, not in front of the team. If you expect me to lead this group, chew me out in your office and not in front of the team. And Starr said Lombardi never chewed him out in front of the team ever again. I bring that up because that's another example of learning or knowing how to lead in different ways. Some will respond to public criticism, and that's how they get motivated. That's how they are led. That's how they'll focus or whatever. Some won't. And some won't lead that way. But it's up to the leader. It's up to that captain. It's up to that in this case, that quarterback to understand how your teammates get motivated, to how to lead your individual teammates, because not everybody's going to be the same. And I don't know if maybe Aaron didn't know how to lead certain people. Maybe he just has the one mindset and it's like, get on board. This is how we do it. This is how I do it. If you're not with me, you're kind of against me, or you're going to have to fall in line. It worked for some. Obviously, it's worked for some players. It's worked for some teammates. For others, it didn't. Not saying it's right or wrong. But I'll admit, when that first 11 years ago, when it came out, when this whole drama sort of stuff started happening, as a fan, I'm like, no, I got the quarterback's back. I've got Aaron's back. I mean, these guys are just, what are they doing? They're messing with the hand that's feeding them. That's the reason they're winning games and they're winning Super Bowls. And all he's doing is trying to hold people accountable. He's trying to be a leader. But as time has passed, I've softened on that stance. Now, I don't necessarily agree with, everything Jennings said, or I don't necessarily agree with the way it's been thrown out there, or the platforms and that sort of stuff. But I've softened on that stance because I truly believe people are led differently and in different ways. And it's up to a great leader, whether it's a coach or whether it's a player, to understand how different players get motivated. It's like in business with your bosses. You want a boss that can lead the right way, but have the ability to lead in different ways. Not just, we all want to, there's probably certain situations, whether it's jobs now, jobs in the past, or whatever, where you've had that boss like, gosh, I can't stand working with them because you didn't like the way they led, or they didn't like the way they were leading your teammates, or, weren't very open or stuff. And I think, honestly, when we see this stuff, and I get what Ryan Fitzpatrick is saying, like, Fitzpatrick was probably of the mindset, or this is how he was as he was a quarterback. He probably went up if there was a bad play. My bad. You hear coaches say this all the time, right? When coaches go up to the podium after a loss, what do they usually say? It's on me. It's on our coaching staff. We got to coach better. We got to prepare our guys better. That's usually one of the first things they say after a loss. Loss is on us. Loss is on me. That might not be the message, and likely so. That's probably not the message that is being sent in meetings, behind closed doors, that sort of stuff. But coaches aren't going to throw their players under the bus in front of reporters and public and the fans, ultimately. Not too often, I shouldn't say it hasn't never happened, but not too often are you going to have a coach go out there and say, yeah, the reason we lost today was because Jordan Love was just awful. Jordan Love is the reason why we lost today's game. You're not going to see that too often. Or sometimes maybe you can read a little bit in between the lines. So I think, when I've softened my stance after, now you're seeing this, and now I'm kind of like that. What Driver said, I remember when Driver came out with those comments, I'm like, okay, and then Driver didn't really get a lot of flack like Jennings did from Packers fans, because he's Donald Driver, right? He's like one of the ultimate Packers, favorite Packers all time. So he had that. He kind of had that already on, and it helped. But now, when I saw Fitz say that, and then I listened to that, I'm like, okay, it makes more sense what Driver was saying. It makes more sense what Driver was saying. And I think when you go, and Driver had the unique, and Jennings did for a little bit too, but Driver had the unique experience of playing with both Favre and Rodgers. And we know that Favre and Rodgers are two completely different styles of quarterbacks. Favre, gunslinging, he'd throw it up. He'd give his receivers a shot to make a play, even if they were in triple coverage. And a lot of times, Favre would take the blame and take the heat because sometimes they were just stupid throws, and he knew it, but he would take it. Rodgers, more calculated. Didn't want to make mistakes. Didn't want to throw interceptions. The whole trust factor, right? So, yeah, receivers probably appreciated more. Jennings and Driver probably appreciated more playing. And I'm not saying they didn't like playing for Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers helped them win a Super Bowl. But, Favre probably took a lot of the heat off those guys a little bit because, I mean, he's Favre and he's, my bad, I shouldn't throw that or something like that. Everybody responds differently to leadership in that. And I think, and I don't want to, Aaron's obviously been doing this for a long time. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a, all that stuff. But if there's one criticism maybe on him is like, maybe be a little bit more adaptable to how you lead your teammates in terms of the public perception. Like, I get it. Okay, you're right. Mike Williams ran the wrong route. But was that necessarily the best way to go about it in a public forum? Because he's Aaron Rodgers, and whatever he says, fans are usually going to gravitate. If you're a fan of the Jets, or in our case, for a lot of us, when it happened with Packers, you're going to gravitate towards Aaron and be on his side. And you're putting that teammate and you're putting that player in a really awkward position. Yeah, he may have screwed up. He may have did something wrong. Not only are you, in the fact that, okay, you already annoyed your quarterback, you made him upset, you probably, frustrated your teammates, and now you're kind of getting thrown under the bus in the public in that. As a quarterback, go up there and say, you know what, bad throw, or you know what, we just didn't make it. We just didn't make the play happen, and leave it at that. And then talk to the guy behind. Have your back. Have his back. It's because sometimes it seems like he doesn't have. Yeah, you threw in, hey, I love Mike, and he's done some nice things for us. It's like the whole no offense, but sort of thing. So when I saw that again, just to kind of wrap it up, what Fitzpatrick, I'm like, okay, the Driver and Jennings stuff make a little bit more sense now. And now I understand what they were trying to say. Because there was an example of it, and somebody pointed that out, and then it's like, oh, after 11 years, I kind of know now what they were saying. Wasn't like that for every teammate, though, obviously. Look at the Jordys, look at the Randall Cobbs, look at the Devontaes, that sort of stuff. Just thought it was kind of interesting. I just thought it was kind of interesting to see that perspective. Again, not everybody's the same. Not everybody's going to lead the same. And not everybody's going to respond to the same leadership. But for me, good leaders, whether it's in teams, whether it's teams or whether it's businesses, good leaders know how to lead different individuals in different ways. It goes back to like the Mike Daniels. Remember Mike Daniels for Green Bay? And Mike Daniels was a very vocal leader, right? Very animated, very pumped up, very amped up. And I remember there was I don't know if it was like a column or report or whatever, but there was this something where, yeah, there were some guys in the locker room that didn't really like how Mike Daniels was going about leading. They weren't all about the yelling and the jacked up, intense sort of thing. That's how Mike Daniels led. That doesn't mean everybody responds to that same type of leadership. He may lead some, but he's not going to lead all. But I was going through this, and I go back to the Lombardi and Starr story. And that was one way to lead Starr. You can criticize me. Take it. I'll take it. But his thought process was, don't embarrass me in front of my teammates. Because if you're chewing me out in front of my teammates, or you're throwing me out under the bus in front of my teammates, how are they going to respond to me on the field, being their quarterback, being their leader? And I would have to agree with Starr. I'd have to agree with Bart Starr. I mean, I don't want to get chewed out in front of my coworkers for my boss. If I did something wrong, pull me off to the side. Talk to me about it. I don't want to be embarrassed. And I don't know, I'm sure some of it is because of the Devontae Adams acquisition, but Mike Williams wasn't at practice yesterday, as they said, for personal reasons, and now he's on a trading block. Don't know if it's, connecting the dots there, but who knows? All right, 2 hours in, we got one more to go here. We're off tomorrow, so we're kind of making this a football Friday. Keys to victory, key matchups, your predictions, all that good stuff for Packers Texans. Hit us up with a message, 715-830-1912. Quick break, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Final hour kicking off right now on this Thursday morning. What up, everybody? How y'all doing? Appreciate you tuning in. Join in on the fun, join in on the convo here. Mark from EC. Good leaders praise in public and criticize in private. Great show as always. Well, thanks, Mark. And honestly, I'd agree with you too. I would agree with you too. So, we're going to talk some more football coming up in this final hour, final program for the week, heading into the weekend and such. So, get your keys to victory, get your key matchups, your predictions for Packers Texans in. Hit me up with the text or comment on the video streams, or hit me up on the socials. I know we spent the first hour kind of going through some matchups and victories, and I just saw this too. Best completion percentage allowed on 10 or more yards, yard throws. Texans second best. Chiefs best completion percentage allowed. Chiefs 33.3. Texans 34.3. What does that tell all of us? Maybe not a lot of deep opportunities for the Packers, but I would say the Packers receiving group give a little bit more of a unique skill set, as trying to do my Liam Neeson tag from Taken. You got Christian Watson, deep threat, takes the top off. Romeo, kind of a possession strong edge receiver. Jane Reed's all over the place. So we'll see if that kind of plays out here. Maybe will it be a little bit of a shorter passing game? But we also know too that first week the Colts going up against the Texans were able to hit some deep shots against the Texans there too with Anthony Richardson. So, but what are your key matches? And then what are your key players for this game for the Packers taking on the Texans? We got some really interesting games on the slate for week 7 for this NFL season, and games where we're probably going to do a little scoreboard watching. Let's be real, not Denver, New Orleans tonight. Okay, that whatever, but in Detroit at Minnesota. I mean, come on. Fantastic one there. I can guarantee you I'm probably going to try to follow along on my phone with that one as we're at Lambeau on Sunday. So paying a little bit of attention to that one for sure, because I know it's only week 7, but it's a division game, and it's at that point where you got undefeated Minnesota. Do you want them to suffer their first loss? So, division lead is still a game away, or do you want them to beat Detroit? So hopefully if you beat the Texans, you have the same record as Detroit. Then at that point, I think I'm at that point. Whatever happens, happens. Just win the dang game if you're Green Bay. But definitely going to be paying attention to it. I'm going to be paying attention a little bit to Kansas City at San Francisco. San Francisco 3-3. Your NFC North might have 3 teams in this thing. Chicago's got the bye. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. But you got Baltimore at Tampa Bay. That's another good game. Jets at Pittsburgh now. That's an intriguing one. Russell Wilson maybe getting the start. What do you think about that? So, yeah, we got some good games. And then college football. We know Badgers are going to be taking on Northwestern. Will Wisconsin's offense continue to do what they've done the last 2 weeks, putting up a bunch of yards and putting up a bunch of points in this thing? Can they do that with Northwestern? Leading into a big game next week against Penn State. You've got Alabama visiting Tennessee, Michigan at Illinois. 2 Big Ten opponents just inside the top 25 rankings. And then Georgia, Texas. Georgia at Texas, 5 versus 1. That is going to be one heck of a matchup. That's going to be some exciting football. I mean, if Georgia wins, and assuming Oregon wins Friday night against Purdue, you'd think then Oregon probably moves up to number 1 in the country. But definitely will be some more shuffling in terms of the rankings right now, because Texas currently is your number 1 team. Oregon's 2, then Penn State's 3, Ohio State 4. 3 Big Ten teams in the top 4. Still weird to say that with Oregon, but we got some really good college football games and some good NFL games coming up on the docket too. And on the college or on the local college side of things, Blue Golds They're going to be taking on La Crosse, the WIAC, however you want to pronounce it. I've heard it from different people. I've been yelled at for different ways. So we'll just say the WIAC for crying out loud. But you've got, the Blue Golds coming off of a 41-0 win over Point. They're going to be taking on La Crosse. Stout football coming off of that big-time win against Whitewater. I mean, you look at Stout. Early September, Stout defeated Dickinson State University, that time ranked number 16, North Dakota, 22-20. And then they defeated number 8 Whitewater. I mean, Stout right now is 4-1, and they're going up against River Falls, number 11 River Falls. I got to imagine they pulled off that upset against River Falls. You're going to see Stout into the rankings. And you look at the Division III national rankings. I mean, you can go to ESPN right now, and you've got Platteville at number 6 in the country. They moved up 5 spots. River Falls dropped 6 spots. They're at 11. You've got Oshkosh at 19, Whitewater at 22, La Crosse at 24. Stout did receive votes. They received 55 votes over there. So right now, you look at the conference play in the WIAC, it's kind of all over the place with some of the upsets from last week. Blue Golds have a shot going up against La Crosse, coming to town this weekend too. And a little bit later on this morning, you want to check out our latest Rolling with the Golds podcast. I'm also going to have portions of it up on the Man Cave podcast too. But we talked with 3 wide receivers who have such an amazing story, their journey to where they're at now. Listen to it. It's a fun conversation. It's kind of a deep conversation too, but the best way I think I could describe that conversation with those 3 very impressive players was it was a good reminder why we love sports, for the love of the game. It was a really good reminder for that. So that'll be available a little bit later on this morning. So they definitely got a big fan in me with those 3 young men there. So check it out. They'll be up a little bit later on this morning. We've got some predictions to get to. Eric saying for Packers and Texans. Close battle comes down the wire. New kicker. McManus hits the go-ahead field goal. 27-24 Packers. Ben saying he's going to go 24-21 Packers. Nathan saying Texans squeak it out. They've got a very good long-distance kicker. Going to go with 30-27. Mike is going with the Pack, 31-28. Another Texans pick here. This is from Rick. Rick saying, pains me to say this, but I think the Texans eke it out 27-20. All right, so we'll get back to some more of those coming up a little bit later on. But who are some key players in this thing? Who are some key players in this game going up against the Texans? And how would you play this if you're Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator? We've seen him, different game plans almost every single week. 3 of these weeks going up against mobile quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, that game plan first half really wasn't working, but nice adjustment in the second half. Really attacked Will Levis. How do you game plan going up against CJ Stroud, who's got the best rating against the blitz this year for quarterbacks? But he's not the biggest rusher. So how do you game plan him? What do you do if you're Hafley? I think, if I pick an offensive player and a defensive player in this thing for players to watch, I think defensively, I'm going to go Rashawn Gary. Because, Rashawn Gary might have had his best game of the season last week. Didn't put up any sacks, but he had, was it the best run grade according to Pro Football Focus? Had the most pressures. I think Green Bay's defense has to get home or has to provide some consistent pressure against CJ Stroud without bringing extra blitzers, because That's how Stroud has been killing some of these defenses, is when they're bringing the extra blitz and extra blitzers. So Green Bay's got to get home with 4 or 5. And that's got to come from guys like Rashawn Gary. I want to see Rashawn Gary going out there and wrecking this game, being a force, providing consistent pressure. It's not going to happen on every snap, but I want to see Rashawn Gary now. Okay, you had a good game last week. May not show it in the box score, but when you kind of really break it down, he had a solid game last week. Let's take it another step now. Let's stack that success. Win your one-on-ones. Yep, you know what? You're probably going to continue to get shipped like you have been a lot this year. But let's go and wreck this thing. Let's go after Stroud. Beat the guy across from you and provide that pressure. Rashawn Gary is my defensive pick for player to watch. I want to see it happen this week against Houston. Because if he can provide some consistent pressure, if that defensive front overall can provide that consistent pressure against C.J. Stroud, make him uncomfortable back there. Don't let him be comfortable and sit back in that pocket and let him pick apart. Allow Stephon Diggs to find those open spots to get open, or where he is Dare Ogunbowale for a little dink and dunk pass, or Dalton Schultz across the middle from tight end, Tank Dell, whatever. Provide some pressure on him, but without bringing those extra blitzers. Offensively, I'm going to go a little bit different route. I'm going to go Rasheed Walker in this because Turner right now for the Texans, their edge rusher, second-year guy. First of all, the Texans knocked him out of the park, it looks like, for their draft last year with obviously C.J. Stroud. But then, I was reading a quick text. Apologies. But, you look at what the Texans have done these last year's in the draft, hitting it on the C.J. Stroud. And, boy, that C.J. Stroud stuff last year leading into that draft looks absolutely ridiculous, where he could fall. And, is he going to – he's an Ohio State quarterback. Is he going to succeed? Dude is blowing it out of the water right now. But then what do the Texans also do after C.J. Stroud? They're like, okay, we got our quarterback now. We're going to go get our defensive player. And Will Anderson Jr. is having a fantastic year too. 5.5 sacks so far. 9 tackles for loss. 9 tackles for loss for Will Anderson Jr. And he's got Danielle Hunter on the other side, which Packers are very familiar with from his time with the Vikings. But I'm going to say Rasheed Walker at this point because I've got confidence in Zach Tom over on the right side. And assuming D'Amico Ryans and assuming the Texans are going to move some of their guys around, their edge rushers around a little bit, assuming that Will Anderson's going to be lined up against Rasheed Walker, it's going to be important for Rasheed Walker to win a lot of those matchups without having maybe a tight end helping him out, a running back helping him out, without a lot of chips going over there. I'm sure the Packers are going to employ that. But Walker's got to continue to keep Jordan Love clean. Jordan Love's been sacked 4 times in 4 games this year. By comparison, C.J. Stroud's been sacked 16 times in 6 games. Do the math. Does 2 games equal 12 sacks? Probably not. So C.J. Stroud's been sacked more than Jordan Love this year. But don't let Will Anderson take over. Kind of like what we were saying with Rashawn Gary. Don't let Will Anderson do that for the Texans' defensive front. And if he is lined up against Walker quite a bit, Walker's got to do, he's got to have his head on a swivel. He's got to play a solid game to help keep Jordan Love clean and not under pressure. Allow Jordan Love to get the ball out to Jaden Reed. And if that deep ball's not going to be there, able to let some plays develop and getting the ball out to his playmakers. So I'm going to go a little bit of a different route here. I'm going to stay within the trenches with my offensive player to watch. I'm going to go with Rasheed Walker, assuming that he's going to be lined up. Well, even if it is Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter's got 2.5 sacks this year too. But going up against one of those guys, whether it's Anderson or Danielle Hunter. So My players to watch: Rashawn Gary on the defensive side, and Rasheed Walker. I'll throw an honorable mention one in here just because he's new. Our new kicker, Brandon McManus. You know, what if he's in a situation where 5 seconds left in the game, Packers are down 1, 45-yard field goal? We're all going to be holding our breath. I mean, regardless of who the kicker's in that situation, we're all probably holding our breath at that point. But might be holding it a little bit more because we've been down this road the last couple years with kickers missing kicks in that situation. He's a bit of an unknown. We haven't seen him in a Packers uniform. He hasn't kicked this year since off-season stuff. So this is our first glimpse of him. So he's kind of an honorable mention one for me. And I think the biggest thing here too with McManus, you look at what he has done from the 40 to 49 yard field goals, because that, for whatever reason, that was Anders' issue. Anders has a leg. He's got the distance. That was an issue. Narveson has a leg, but it was the 40 to 49 yard. And when you look at it, this is from Zach Cruz, Carlson and Narveson from last year to this year, field goals from 40 to 49, 52.9% between Carlson and Narveson. When you look at McManus's career, 85.7%. You're talking 52.9% compared to 55.7%. That is a huge difference. And you hope that is a difference that we will still see with, again, a kicker who hasn't kicked in a game yet this year. But you look at it history-wise, because that's the frustrating ones, right? I mean, if a kicker's missing 58, 59, like, okay, that's a long distance. It's the 40 to 49 that's like, okay, or even like 38, 30. Dude, you want your kickers to be able to, get in the, at least have an 80, close to 90%. I know the league averages, I think, is like 78, 77% from 40 to 49. That's where the frustration comes from when you are missing, one, your extra points because they're a little bit longer, but those 40 to 49 yard field goals. And if you're only hitting half of that, you're not doing your job. So I hope that's the biggest difference we see. Not just, making more kicks overall. It's that 40 to 49 yard range. Because that's the frustrating one. You can make up an excuse, or you can, give them a little bit of a leeway with those long distance 58, 59 yarders. But if you're consistently missing something in a range that you've got to hit 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, whatever, that's where the frustration point comes from. So that's my honorable mention, Brandon McManus. See what we got with him. Will there be a little rust that he has to kick off? Pun intended. All right. Keep those coming. We're going to take a quick break. Talk a little hoops. Giannis. It's final preseason game tonight for the Bucks. It doesn't sound like Middleton's going to play, and that means no Middleton at all in the preseason. How does that bode for him starting off the season? Giannis also did an interview with The Athletic, and one thing he said is making headlines again all over the place. But is it an overreaction? As Annie from The Office would say, it's a bit of an overreaction. We'll talk about it coming up next. Youth teams, leagues, listen up if you need some new swag, need some new uniforms, need some new jerseys. Whether maybe basketball season coming up or getting ready for Little League next year, or maybe your football teams are wrapping up their seasons and you need some new jerseys for next year. Look good, play good, right? Well, Residence Branding Company can help you with that. Check out their website, residencebrandingcompany.com, located right in our own backyard. Okay, Residence Branding Company in Altoona, 1728 Spooner Avenue, Suite C in Altoona. But they can help your teams. They can help your leagues set you up with some new uniforms. Looking good, look good, play good. Also, if you want to maybe help raise some funds or you want to sell some merchandise to your fans, they can set you up with an online store and you can pick and choose what items you want to sell over there. Maybe not only some like shirts and hats, but maybe some other stuff over there too, water bottles or whatever the case may be. Entire team there, Ben, Matt, Eric, Quinn, JR, everybody over there. So easy to work with, so helpful to work with. So check them out, ResidenceBrandingCompany.com. Also, Resonance Branding Company, the official swag provider for the program. We got some new items up on our swag cave over there too. So, hey, we don't have an outdoor tidbits with Jake. Jake's out duck hunting here this morning. So we'll hopefully catch up with him next week here. But best of luck to anybody. We've got the pheasant season opens Saturday. So best of luck to the general public. Pheasant season opens up 9 a.m. on the 19th. Don't forget to submit those photos if you have any luck, so we can put them up on that Tilden Gun trophy board on our website. Okay, the Tilden Gun trophy board. But also, don't forget, we still have the Ultimate Wisconsin Outdoorsman Quest. Okay, that checklist. All right, and this is part of that checklist over there too. You want to be crowned either adult or youth, the Ultimate Wisconsin Outdoorsman. More details at sportstalk1051.com outdoors page over there. It should be a lot of fun. And there's a lot, and I don't expect everybody or anybody to check off everything on that checklist. But wanted to put a bunch of stuff up there so everybody has a chance to try to knock off as many and then hopefully be crowned the ultimate Wisconsin outdoorsman. Bucks are going to be wrapping up their preseason tonight. Then we got tip-off next Wednesday going up against the Philadelphia 76ers. We've got Giannis, who did an interview with The Athletic, Sam Amick from The Athletic. And there's a headline from this interview that he did, that Giannis did, that is like all over the place now, because it's the world we live in. You see one headline, you see one quote, people run with it, and maybe sometimes don't provide any context to it. So here's the quote. And then we're going to provide a little context for you, okay? And actually say what was actually said in the article. This is the quote. If we don't win this year, would you get fired? Giannis apparently grabbed a Buck staffer and said this. Do you have it in the back of your mind? Like, what if this year doesn't go well? Yeah, if we don't win a championship, I might get traded. This is a job we live. This is the world we're living in. It's everybody. So that sparked headlines all over. Giannis saying he could get traded if they don't win this year. And it renewed the whole, could it be Golden State? Oh, could it be the Lakers? Maybe even New York, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the context with it all. This is directly from the Athletics write-up from Sam Amick. As a Buck staffer walks by, Giannis grabs the man by the shoulder and asks a remarkably pointed question. If we don't win this year, would you get fired? Giannis asks with a wry smile to his coworker. Then it goes on with the rest of the quote. As Sam writes, it was heavy and humorous all at once. Even more so when Giannis pulled a similar prank on Bucks general manager John Horst on his way out of the gym after the interview. So it was in good nature. It was in good nature. But it also pointed out, I think, the reality of what we see in sports. We see it a lot of times, not just basketball. We see it in the NFL. We see it in Major League Baseball, hockey, whatever the case may be. You have I mean, that's kind of the talking point with the Jets right now. You have a lot of talent, high-priced talent. If it doesn't work out, what tends to happen sometimes? You blow it all up and you start over. And that's kind of what I think Giannis was referring to. If they don't do well this year, could they be one of those teams that are like, you know, it's not working anymore, we're blowing it up? That's what he was kind of referring to, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that he's going to get traded or not. He's just acknowledging that that happens sometimes with some teams, with teams that have these championship goals, maybe have some veterans on their team, high-priced veterans, but if it's not working, teams will be like, all right, we tried, blow it up. I don't think it happens. But it points to the mindsets and kind of what's at stake for this Bucks team. It is championship or bust. They ain't rebuilding. They ain't 1 year, 2 year, 3 years away. It's a win now. Even with national media, you know, not giving the Bucks a lot of attention or maybe not giving them, you know, a lot of confidence that they can win it all this year. The Bucks know, everybody in that organization, players, coaches, front office, ownership knows it's still championship or nothing this year. But they face so much uncertainty. There's an unknown element to this team. And they don't have the amount of hype that they've had the last couple of years. Even with Giannis and Dame together. Dame, you know, having a full off season and not being traded weeks before preseason and kind of adjusting. A veteran coach, you know, they don't have the hype. And I think part of it is you look at since they've won the championship last couple years, their playoff success hasn't been there. Boston looks dominant again. You've got the New York Knicks making moves. They made that push last year. Jalen Brunson, and then, you know, they make the acquisitions of like Karl-Anthony Towns. So they're like the sexy pick, and it's New York. And then Philadelphia, they bring in Paul George to pair him up with Joel Embiid and Max Muncy. So you had teams making big moves, but Boston also in there too, and they just look very deep. So Milwaukee's kind of like, hey, we're, you know, they're the kid in the corner saying, I'm still here, you know, over here. And honestly, I think if you're the Bucks, you're cool with it. Let these other teams get that added extra attention. There's still pressure on the Bucks, but maybe there's not that pressure from that national media sense. I think there's pressure from fans, and there's easily pressure from this team overall. Because they know what's at stake. They know that they don't have 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line. This is the now. This is you got to win a ring now, especially for a guy maybe like Dame too, looking for his first ring. And we know Giannis, his mindset, his goals all the time is to win games, to win championships. And he wants multiple championships, not just, hey, got one and I'm good. The greats have multiples. And I think one of the main things that I'm going to be curious, and one of the main things that I'm going to be watching this season when it gets to the Bucks, is the cohesion between Damian Lillard and Giannis. You know, last year we were like, okay, now, you know, we're going to see some pick and rolls. We're going to see some, you know, those two are just going to dominate at that. And at times they played great, but then it was just like, okay, it's just, there was that like, okay, not quite to what we're at. And then you started to hear a little bit more, you know, Dame coming in, you know, just before preseason, you know, the Terry Stotts thing, then change of coaches. I mean, it was kind of a mess. And Dame was going through some family stuff too. And Damian has talked about, and he's been saying all offseason, even shortly after the season was over with, he's like, expect a better me for this season. And in this piece, he even talked about it. He said, quote, I'm doing great now. I'm way more at peace. It's the way with everything, though. When hard times come, it feels like, dang, this is the hardest thing ever. And then when you get some time removed from it, you realize it's not so bad. And we heard a little bit last year, too, during the season where Doc, when he came aboard and he was the head coach, it kind of felt like Dame was maybe a little bit of a loner, not, but Doc would spend time with him, go out to dinner with him, watch boxing with him. So it feels like, at least this is what he's saying, that Damian Lillard is more comfortable, more at peace, and maybe a little bit more relaxed. And now we're really going to see that 1-2 punch that we were really hoping to see last year. And we saw it at points. But I think we were left wanting a little bit more. Wanting a little bit more. And they didn't get a lot of time. And they didn't get a lot of time this offseason. But it was almost like last year was like Damian and Giannis learning on the fly a little bit, learning how to play with each other. And Damian talked about that too. He said, quote, you're trying to figure it out with another star and with somebody else who has the ball. Giannis had to figure it out with somebody else that has the ball, and that was the same thing for me. So I think that second year, obviously you get more comfortable with what it looks like now. You know the coach. I know my teammates. I know Giannis a lot better. I know what it's like playing with Giannis a lot more. So all things considered, I think that next year you settle. You usually settle in, and it's better. There's that. I'm curious. I think the Darvin Ham, bringing him back as an assistant coach on that bench, the connection he has with so many of these Bucks players, including Giannis, Chris Middleton, and then Brook Lopez. He knows a lot of those guys yet. I think that's going to be a boost with this thing. But my biggest question mark I still have with this team is going to be their defense, and especially when it comes to transition defense. I mean, they were getting ran out of the gyms last year, especially against a team like Indiana. Indiana's younger. They want to run up and down the court. Bucks, they've got size with this team this year. They want to make teams try to go through them, but they got to make sure teams aren't going by them first. If you want to make sure that team tries to get through you, don't let them run by you. And that's where, especially when you look at the inside game for the Bucks, you got to make those shots. Brooks got to make those shots down low. Giannis has got to make those shots down low. If you don't make your mid-range or your shots down low, it's a prime position for a team that wants to run in transition to get that ball out to the outlet and have a track race. Your big guys aren't going to get down there in time. That's my one concern, one of the concerns I have with this team so far. I want to see better defense, and I want to see how they handle transition offenses this year. All right, let's take a quick break. We got some picks and predicts coming up here. I'm going to do the full-on Friday version of our picks and predicts since we won't be here tomorrow. So that means all the NFL games and some college games and some baseball and all that good stuff. So final break here. We'll do that right now. And then start to wrap up things here this morning after these quick words. Don't forget, after the show, we'll have a couple of new episodes of the Man Cave podcast brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you got Apple, follow, subscribe to that thing. Make sure the automatic downloads button is turned on. Spotify, follow it. Then you also got to make sure that automatic downloads on there. If you got a few seconds, if you could, it would mean a lot if you could leave a nice little positive review on Apple and 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. That helps the internet lords, whatever we want to call them. Apparently that helps so other people can find the podcast out there too. So if you got a few seconds, doesn't take long. That would be so awesome. So awesome. Let's wrap up this Thursday show. And reminder, no show tomorrow. But let's do some picks and predicts. Brought to you by the Elbow Room, located in Eau Claire. Looking for somewhere to catch some of these games, talk some sports, talk some ball. If you haven't been in there yet, got some sweet memorabilia up in there at the Elbow Room, located right next to the Banbury Place. First off, baseball games today. Yankees, Cleveland. I'm going to go Cleveland gets back into this thing, and they get a win today with the series moving back to Cleveland. So I'll go with that, and I think I'm going to go with the Mets to even up the series tonight. So Cleveland wins, makes it 2-1. Mets win, even up the series tonight. Thursday night's football is also tonight. New Orleans is banged up now too. You've got Sean Payton coming back to Nolens. I'm gonna go with Denver winning this one, but I don't think it's going to be the greatest of games, to be honest with you. So, but who knows? I'll ride with Denver. New England at Jacksonville in London. Give me Jacksonville. Seattle at Atlanta. I'm going to go with the Falcons in this one. Tennessee, Buffalo. Give me the Bills. Cincinnati at Cleveland. I'm going to go with the Bengals. Miami at the Colts. Give me the Colts in this one. Detroit at Minnesota. No, this is a tough one. Minnesota's coming off their bye. Detroit's coming off of a dominating win against Dallas. No Aiden Hutchinson. I'm gonna go Detroit. All right, I'm gonna go Detroit. Hands Minnesota the first loss. Philadelphia at New York. Give me the Eagles. Raiders at the Rams. Cooper Kupp might be coming back. I'm actually surprised the line is this much, but the Rams are favored by 6.5. They're favored by touchdown and an extra point. So I'm a little surprised it's that high, but regardless, I'm going Rams anyways. Carolina at Washington. Give me Washington. Kansas City at San Francisco. San Francisco is favored 1.5. So, I mean, neutral side to beat Kansas City. But I'm going with the Chiefs. Jets at Pittsburgh. I'm going to go with the Jets to win this one. And then finally, Houston at Green Bay. Green Bay's favored by 2.5. Let's go. Man, let's go 27-24 Green Bay. Let's ride it. Big win for Green Bay. Put themselves at 5-2 on the season. College football. Let's do a couple picks here for the college football slate. Let's start off. Well, we'll just do Wisconsin and Northwestern right away. Wisconsin's favored by 7. I think Wisconsin wins, and I do think they cover. I don't think they're going to get up to 40-some points like they did, at least 40-some points, 50-some 2 weeks ago, and 40, 42 last week. I think it'll be the 30s. I'm going to go Wisconsin, but they cover. They cover. Alabama at Tennessee. Alabama is a 3-point favorite. I think Alabama wins, and I think they cover. Michigan at Illinois. Michigan's favored by 3.5 in this one. I'm going to go Michigan. Sorry, Illini, Greg. I'm going to go with Michigan to win this game. We've got Texas and Georgia. Georgia at Texas. Number 5, Georgia. Number 1, Texas. Texas is favored by 5. Oof. Boy. I'm going to go Georgia. I'm going to go Georgia in this one. They pull it off. technically an upset. So I'm going to go Georgia. If I had to pick who I'm rooting for, I'm going to go Texas, but I'm going to go Georgia on this one. So, all right, those are your picks and predicts. Brought to you by, again, our good friends at the Elbow Room. Packers will be back at practice later on today. It was not a bad practice report, injury report for the Packers yesterday. Dontavian Wicks was able to do some stuff after he left the game early last week due to an injury, injured shoulder. He was initially, it was said he was week to week, but he was at practice yesterday doing some stuff. Officially listed as limited, but we'll see if he's out there doing something today and obviously tomorrow and such. But overall, there's just 3 players who didn't practice for the Packers. That's Colby Wooden, Devontae Wyatt still hasn't practiced, and Elton Jenkins didn't practice. It's listed as a knee, but part of me is kind of wondering, is it just, veterans type of day off there too? So probably get a better idea today and such, hopefully. Knock on wood. Everything kind of, nothing bad pops up with this latest, the next 2 days with practice and such, but we'll get that a little bit later on today. I do want to say this too. I want to give a tip of the cap to Brian Gutekunst, Packers general manager, for this aspect. And I'm not trying to rail on Ted Thompson, but one of the criticisms from Ted Thompson, whether it was from media or fans, was that he didn't do a whole lot of interviews, didn't do a lot of pressers. I mean, you could set your calendar to when he was going to do it. It was like, before the season starts, the end of the season, combine, that sort of stuff. Whenever decisions were made, usually didn't have a press conference, or he usually wouldn't take impromptu conferences and answer questions from the media. Goody has done that. He did it yesterday. I mean, it was kind of an impromptu one. He was outside the Don Hudson Center. He was outside with reporters, and he didn't have to answer questions about the McManus signing, but he did. He probably knew it was going to be a signing that some fans would have questions about, some media members were going to have questions about. But Brian Gutekunst took questions. He answered those questions. And so I got to tip my cap to him. And he's done this before with other moves. I know in his first year, the very unpopular one of Jordy Nelson, he did a presser and he took questions. Whereas that was one of the criticisms from Ted, was he didn't hardly hear from the guy and he wouldn't answer some of those questions. And in fact, it was Mike McCarthy that had to answer a lot of those questions when it was decisions that weren't necessarily his. He had to answer them for the organization. So I do have to tip my cap to Goody for going out there, kind of taking those questions so Matt LaFleur doesn't have to. Matt LaFleur is still going to get some versions of those questions. But to go out there and explain his reasonings, his thought process, also, tip of the cap for him for doing that, because that is different. And I got to imagine the Packers media probably appreciates it, and probably fans too, to hear from their general manager once in a while and why they decided to do this and why they decided to do that. So I got to give him a tip of the cap for that. And it was very impromptu. I mean, if you, I know our good buddy Rob Demonski's got a video. It's literally outside when they were at practice. He's outside the Don Hudson Center and such. So, all right, shot clock's going to cut me off here in 30 seconds. A big thanks for all of you for chiming in, tuning in. Big thanks to Dr. Crow for adjusting his schedule and hopping on here this morning. Reminder, all of those segments inside the training room when we do outdoor tidbits and that is also available on our podcasting. So if you missed Dr. Crow's chat, that'll be up on the Man Cave podcast a little bit later on this morning. So look for that. Again, sometimes we upload multiple episodes in a day. And today is going to be one of those days too. So make sure you're following on there. DP and the Danets, they're up next. Have yourself a fantastic week. And again, I'm out tomorrow. So I don't want any emails or tweets saying what's going on. I'm out. Okay. Won't be here. But I'll talk to you next week. All right. Have a good one. See you then.